you get bored, right? When you play a game enough times, like basketball, if you play that over and over and over, eventually you're going to get bored. If you play a game over and over and over, eventually you're going to get bored. Because you get so good that there's no more challenge. And you play it out so much that it loses all of its novelty it had at the beginning. James Clear, the writer of this book, Atomic Habits, and he actually puts it in the book. I highly recommend you check out the book. It's very beneficial and I love it. So, one of the stories he tells in the book was at the time he went to a gym to see a personal trainer who trained athletes and even some Olympians. James Clear went to the personal trainer and asked, "What's the secret to being a top level athlete? What's the difference between top level athletes and everyone else?" Then the personal trainer said some generic things like genetics, luck, and talent. But then the personal trainer said, "At some point, it all comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over." This surprised James Clear, and when I read it, it surprised me. Because when you're training, you're doing the same things over and over, and you have to be able to handle that. You have to be able to handle the boredom of doing that same thing over and over. Because it's boring. It gets boring. The practices, there's no more challenge to them, and it gets boring. And so, one thing you can do, and James Clear explains, there's a rule, alright? It's called the Goldilocks rule, and it explains how there's a spectrum between boredom and frustration. Boredom is where there's no challenge at all, and frustration is where there's too much challenge. Now, if you take these two and find the perfect middle, where James Clear says 4% challenge, you are going to enter a state of flow, a state where it's just perfect. You're just challenged just enough that you find enjoyment and you hit a state of flow. Now, this is very hard to achieve in your day-to-day life, but give the example I said before. If you do a practice for long enough and it gets boring, just up the challenge a little bit. Make it a little bit tougher. Add a little bit of toughness to it. But at the end of the day, like the personal trainer says, it all comes down to who can handle the pain of boredom. And that's it. You got this, bro.